A great story. Goes back to 1464. This fellow here, Luigi Carnero, was born in central Italy, a little town called Padua. And Luigi Carnero, when he was 37 years old, it was 1501. Luigi was morbidly obese, weighed about 600 pounds, had thyroid problems and reflux, and he had bone problems and had congestive heart failure, and his father was really concerned about his health. So, because Luigi's eating like 10 chickens a day and 4 gallons of wine and 14 loaves of bread and 16 pounds of potatoes, he's just sitting there eating all day. And so his father calls in this team of physicians, and they spend a week there on this estate examining Luigi, and they said, well, Luigi's not going to live to be 38. He's got too many things wrong with him. There's not much we can do for all these diseases. And once Luigi learned that, he's sitting there pining away, looking out the window, and he notices these 70, 80-year-old women out in the fields picking weeds out of the gardens. And so he has them called in, and he says, what are you gals eating? And they tell him. And for the next 66 years, until 1567, when he died at age 103, Luigi ate exactly as these 70 and 80-year-old women were eating. He had 1 hard-boiled egg for breakfast and a glass of red wine, which has resveratrol and polyphenols and all kinds of antioxidants in it, and he had that one hard-boiled egg. For lunch, he had a little teacup-sized bowl full of vegetable soup and 1 tablespoon of red meat. For dinner, he had 1 slice of bread and a glass of wine. Experts have calculated he was only eating 1,000 calories a day. He was tempted by all his relatives and friends during that 66 years, but he refused, and he just ate exactly as those women said. And so he added 66 years to his life, despite what this great team of physicians said. And so he wrote a book called The Art of Living Long. It's the best-selling book ever in Europe. It's translated into 80 languages. And if you ask anybody in Europe or Scandinavia if they've ever heard of Luigi Carnero, they all know the story. So he actually showed that by doing that, it's quite true. Now, there's a guy in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, by the name of Frank Calloway. Back in July of 2008, Frank Calloway turned 112, drives the school bus. He makes thousands of dollars for each of his artworks. On butcher paper, about 3 feet by 2.5 or 3 feet, almost square, with crayons, he draws drawings from the days when he was a little kid in the late 1800s, and he sells them for thousands of dollars a piece for this artwork. They have big art showings and art galleries of his artwork. And if you're a boxing fan, he kind of looks like George Foreman. If you're a boxing fan, you know what I'm talking about. To me, it reminds me of George Foreman. And 112 years old, and he's going strong. Well, the interesting thing about him, 58 years ago, he was institutionalized in an insane asylum. He's been eating institutional food for 58 years. No Harvard medical doctors, no Mayo clinics or nothing like that, and not being taken care of very well. And he's going strong and driving the school bus at 112. He has a 3rd grade education because he has a calorie-restricted diet. This gal here, Edna Parker, from Shelbyville, Indiana, it's kind of central Indiana, was the oldest woman in the world, or actually was the oldest person in the world, died at 115 a couple of months ago. And she lived on a farm for 100 years until her kids thought she was getting too lonely out there, so they took her off the farm. But she was actually supplementing, and I'll tell you how she was supplementing in just a little bit. She was actually supplementing with nutrients, but she wasn't eating very much. You can see she's slim, about 1,500 calories a day. This fella just died. He's the oldest man in the United States. George Francis was born actually in Louisiana, and he died at 112, and he lived on lard, L-A-R-D, pig fat sandwiches, and eggs and dairy products. That was it. That's all he ate all the time. He lived to be 112. Just flies in the face of everything that a doctor would tell you, right? Kind of an interesting guy. Lived out in the boonies of Louisiana. Probably ate a few alligator eggs and things like that once in a while.